Okay, we're back with our database, and so remember we click on view here to get to the design of the database, where we basically set up how we want the data to be stored, and that's the most important thing. This tells us how we want the data to be stored, and the other view tells us what the data is that we've stored. So in the design view, let's just have a look at some of these descriptions that I've copied across from here, from the sheet that you're usually given to say how the data needs to be stored. So under category, for example, so this is the information I've copied from the sheet which says what the fields are going to be. So let's just have a look at the category field. We'll leave the ID one to last because that's the fiddliest field to sort out. But under the category field, it says it's a text field, and it says that the code for it is ED or LA. So I'm just going to check that. There's the category field, and indeed the code is only LA or ED. So let's just go to view. So the first thing to look at is I'm clicked on category. It's text, but it says the field size is 50. And what that means is it's taking up 50 letters or spaces or characters to store just ED or LA. And actually ED can be stored in just 2 characters. LA can be stored in just 2 characters. So that's the first change I'm going to make. And then I'm going to go to my table view. It says you have to save the table first. Yes, yes. And my category field is still okay. Obviously, if my category field was not okay and I'd saved it and bits had been chopped off, then I would have to copy my backup database and work from that. But it's all fine. So that's the first thing I'm going to change. The next thing it says is that it's only ED or LA and no other values are allowed. So again, how the data is going to be stored, that's all I'm looking at the moment. So one of the things I can do is there are 2 things I can do. Either in my validation rule, I can type in ED or LA, and remember the or has to be in capitals, and click away from that and it puts my quotes in automatically. So validation rule means that I only want this value to be typed into my field. So let's go to the table view here. Let's save this and let's see what this does. So let's have a look. So now if I, for example, type in EB instead, it says it won't allow me to do that, which means that I am now able to validate my data, which means that I can say in my table that only ED and LA is allowed. And we did that using this validation rule here. The other way of doing it, and we'll do that with we'll do it with the ED field again, because the other fields have got lots and lots of things which can be stored. The other way of doing it is, rather than having a text field here, I could actually say that I wanted to have a lookup wizard instead. So I will type in the values that I want, and I know that it can only be ED or LA, so I type in ED here and I type in LA here, and then I just say next and finish, and let's see what this does. So this is still text, but if I click on lookup here, it's now changed this to say the row source is going to be all of these things. But all I want to know is what it looks like in practice. So let me go to my table view. Yes, I want to save it. And what happens now is I can choose either ED or LA. So instead of having to type in ED or LA, I get a drop-down list, which makes this much easier. So let me just put these back to what they should be. So this is educational. So this makes it much easier to actually validate the data, or ensure that the data that's typed into this database is accurate. Remember, this has got 492 records in it. So let me just remind you of how to see how many records we've got. 492 records in it, and to make sure that everybody has typed in the correct version in the category, we have basically used two techniques here. One is validation. So let's just have a look at what our validation is. In the validation rule, we've put this in. And the other one, the other way of doing it, you don't have to use both, is we used lookup instead. So those are the two things that we've used. Now, for the practice one, if I click on this, the type of field that we've got here, we've got a validation rule already, which I've typed in here. You're not going to have one on the database that you're going to download, but in the description part, again, this is given to you in a sheet. If you scroll along the description, it will tell you that it can either be MG, and then you can scroll along a bit more, and then for nature and parks it's AN, and for heritage and culture it's HT, and for sports it's SP. So you're going to see a lot of this in your controlled assessment. You'll be given some data, and you'll be asked, you'll be shown what codes it's going to have, and a good thing for you to do would be to set up validation on it, but also set up lookup on it, because lookup makes entering the data a lot easier to do. So again, I've changed the text here from 50 to just 2, because there are only 2 characters that are needed to type in these codes, because if I look at type here, there are only 2 characters worth of code which is typed into the type field here. So I'm going to leave you to, on the database that you have downloaded, is sort out the category field, so the size, the validation, and adding a lookup to it, doing exactly the same for museums, galleries, the type field, and doing exactly the same for region field. And then after that, we'll look at the other fields that we've got, which are the entry and the opening and closing times. So that's it for now.